welcome to this week's Middle East and Africa Forum for Sustainability Leaders feature interview, where we take a deeper dive into this massive push towards sustainability that we're seeing across the region. Of course, COP28 is finally upon us, trying to uncover intelligence and insights that will help our stakeholders navigate the road ahead. We're lucky to be joined here today with our special guest speaker, Paul Bouchebel, who is the Vice President of Strategy and Sustainability for the AMECA region for Alstom. Thank you for joining the show, Paul. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
I just wanted to kick off with a standard question that we ask all of our sustainability leaders, which is essentially, how is the need and where did that originate from to have a VP of strategy and sustainability within your organization, a leader of sustainability to help navigate that process? How did that originate within Alstom, and what was that process like?
Yeah, so maybe just I start by a few words about Alstom. So we're one of the leading companies in the space of sustainable and smart mobility. So sustainability as a whole is part of our DNA. So it came as a natural part of our business strategy as well as our commitment. Now, in terms of having kind of a VP of sustainable strategy and sustainability, so I cover Africa, Middle East, and Central Asia. So I have a regional view of driving our sustainability agenda for Alstom. At the highest level, given that transport and is a big emitter of CO2. Decarbonization of that sector was critical, right? So thinking about how to make it more sustainable was always, a critical element, and it's becoming more and more important. And at Alstom, as part of our mission, is to drive, a sustainable solution. Hence, having that role came naturally. It wasn't something that, we had to really make a concerted effort to create. It's part of our DNA, it's part of our overall business strategy, and it came as a natural extension to drive our agenda forward.
Just a follow-up question to that. We see sustainability as a definition constantly evolving. And then, of course, there's many companies who are at, point A of the journey, some are a little bit farther along. How do you define sustainability from your perspective? And how that, as you said, baked into the DNA of Alstom, how that carries over to the overall organization?
Absolutely. So in terms of sustainability, we look at it from different angles, right? So one, which is the most common, is around emissions, right? So how do we make sure that our scope 1 and scope 2 emissions are reduced? And as a business, we contribute, or at least we lower our impact on the environment as a whole, right? So that's one clear element that we always look at, and then that translates into our operation. So we manufacture, as your audience might know, we manufacture rolling stock, so trains, locomotive, and what have you. And we're constantly looking at how do we reduce the impact of our industrial footprint on the environment, and that looks at both. What type of energy are we using? Are we using renewable sources? What type of material is going into our rolling stock and our trains to make sure that there's a environmental consciousness that goes into it. And even in our operation, how do we continuously from the train operation make sure that our footprint is minimized? And as a company, we're fully committed towards green solutions. So most of our portfolio is electrified, whether these are electric trains or battery or even hydrogen operated train. So we have that big element in terms of our footprint. Also, we think about kind of smart mobility and inclusive mobility. So how do we make sure that our solutions are not just environmentally friendly, but they're accessible, right? And then that goes into a bit the broader question about sustainability, accessibility, inclusiveness, to make sure that people can actually use our solutions and then shift from the typical modes of transport that they have today. So that's in a nutshell how we think about sustainability from our solutions point of view.
It's a wide remit. It's a wide region that you're covering, and of course, an ever-evolving subject. I imagine even across that region in terms of regulations, always constantly changing and adapting to that. In terms of corporate governance, what recommendations or advice would you give to stakeholders and leaders like yourself of sustainability on how to set up that structure, the teams, essentially, in order to execute those actions? We've had conversations before. Big companies have kept those teams small, trying to embed culture. And then there's also companies who have widened it out to an entire big segment. How do you see that from your perspective?
So that's a very important point you're touching upon, that wide geography and the diversity of the geography that we cover. So we are a global company, and as you might imagine, the importance of sustainability, the level of maturity that different countries put to this topic is very wide, right? And you need to strike a balance in terms of, our European, if you want, part of the business, have set the standards. They are, I would say, ahead when it comes to making sure that sustainability is a critical component of the business. And we're trying to kind of make sure that we have a standard that can be applied globally. Now, in terms of governance, I think one of the most important things is for such a role is to make sure that the scope and responsibility is clear. What it is that we're trying to kind of achieve, and how does it link directly to the overall strategy and objective of the organization. So it cannot be detached, it has to go hand in hand with the business strategy, right? So those are kind of, in terms of the scope and alignment, is critical. Two, you need to create some kind of access and empowerment. If we want to make a concerted effort and actually make an impact, we need to, as sustainability leader, need to have access to the top management, right? It has to be a topic that is top of mind for the leadership, and that is really getting the right exposure and support from them, right? And then equally important is the resources that you actually deploy. These measures that we put in place will have some kind of cost implication. And if we want to see the highest impact, there needs to be some kind of serious, commitment towards deploying resources and budgets towards that. And then I think lastly is maintaining this kind of transparency in terms of both communication, but also the way we're sharing results, so that people see the benefits, people see the impact that it is providing, and then it starts creating this virtuous cycle where, okay, yes, it's making a difference. We're going to invest more because we believe that we can do more. So that's kind of a bit the governance and how it should be structured.
You mentioned leadership buy-in, and that's always a crucial pillar to any strategy, regardless of sustainability or any objective that an organization is doing. What advice would you give to your fellow colleagues on how to achieve that leadership buy-in? Of course, there's always people, planet, and profit comes into it as well. Sustainability investments can sometimes be more long-term than short-term, for example. How would you approach that with leadership? What's your recommendations in order to establish that buy-in?
Yeah. So I think we need to give credit to leaders. Today, they're much more attuned with the importance of having a sustainability agenda and achieving sustainability goals, specifically for companies that are either publicly traded or have, external investors. There is pressure that is coming from the market. There is pressure that's coming from investors that are demanding more focus and more commitment towards sustainability. So that obviously will help. And I think more and more, from the markets, even the way we operate, our clients are demanding more sustainable solutions. So there's a lot of demand and pressure that is helping put these topics at the front or at the top of mind of leaders. And I think as a sustainability leader, one of the key elements that we need to always have in mind is that financial acumen, or that making sure that it's not just a discussion that is, a qualitative discussion, but bringing numbers into it, right? And that for me has been one of the main drivers, like showing the importance and showing the impact that this could have from a financial point of view or from a business point of view has always been one way to convince leadership that this is important. So that combination, I think what we're seeing today with the importance, especially with COP28 starting, hopefully this heightened importance for the subject will continue, and we'll see more and more commitment towards it.
Just touching on that point in terms of numbers, you also mentioned before about transparency in that sense. And of course, we see greenwashing thrown around, but that's also a term that's constantly being redefined. But can you just touch a little bit more on the importance of the transparency aspect and really leveraging that as a unique selling point in order to add value to the company and bring in investment, for example?
Look, in terms of numbers, so I'll maybe share a bit of what we do at Alstom. So we've made some strong commitment towards sustainability in the areas of, for instance, reducing the energy consumption of our trains and rolling stock. So we've committed to reduce our energy consumption by 25%, which obviously translates into emissions and sustainability goals. And that is something that we track on a yearly basis. That is something that we actually disclose to the financial market. So this is something that we really feel strongly about. And the other element is when I spoke a bit about our industrial footprint. So we manufacture trains. And we've also made a commitment that by 2025, we want to have the sources of energy, 100% of the energy from renewable sources that powers our plant. And again, we track this on a quarterly basis. We communicate this to the market. So that level of transparency is there. And frankly, we sometimes get rewarded. Sometimes the market, as long as we're hitting the targets, as long as we're making our commitment, we see a positive reaction from investors, positive reaction from our customers, and even positive reaction from our colleagues and employees that have this at the heart. When they've joined Alstom, they know what's our mission, they know what's our vision in terms of sustainable mobility. So seeing that we are making the investment, seeing that we are progressing towards the goal, creates a very positive momentum all around.
You mentioned a very critical point there, of course, which is employees. In order to hit these targets across this mass, I would say, scope that you're overseeing, that's a critical part in the process as well. What are the skill sets that you see that are needed for future sustainabilities like yourself to achieve in order to be able to make impact in this space? We've had conversations where you've seen some with PhDs in sustainability all the way to others who may just have strategy but have come into that space. What would you say are the top skill sets that one should be looking to acquire in order to make impact in this space?
In terms of skill set, look, I would argue that whether it is a sustainability leader or a finance leader or an operations leader, you have your key leadership skills that you need to have, right? So whether it's strategic thinking, again, linking the sustainability goals with the overall strategy and the business strategy of the company. So that's also going to be critical. I think communication and collaboration, we need to work with different parts of the business, and I would argue the entire business, and we need to make sure that this is constantly, the value, the benefit is constantly communicated and shared, and then we create buy-in. I mentioned a bit financial acumen. One of the, if you want, drawbacks, or at least the things that was missing was it's a qualitative discussion, or I want to use the word fluffy, I don't like it, but it's a fluffy discussion. So the more attuned to the financial implication and the understanding of what that could have creates a bit more convincing in terms of a skill set to have. And I'll also talk about innovation, right? This is really thinking about how do we do business differently? How can we push the boundaries on our own way of working to create more sustainable practices? So having that, innovative view of the world, and being always attuned to what's happening, what are the developments out there, and how can we internalize them in our business is critical. And I think last but not least is, you've mentioned it, some kind of technical expertise. While I don't think you need to have a PhD. You need to understand a bit how your business impacts the environment, how your business impacts your users from a sustainability point of view, so that you actually focus on the right element. So, I wouldn't go say as far you need to get formal training, but you need to be attuned to what are the biggest areas of focus from a sustainability point of view that impact your business, so that you can focus on the right areas.
And just touching again on that communication aspect, of course, there's the numbers which speak for themselves if packaged correctly. But also, you're in a sustainability space. A lot of the chief sustainability officers that we engage with are very highly into that corridor, and to be able to communicate basic messaging across functions, because as you said, it requires the entire company to kind of buy into that culture. How do you break that down and simplify things? Climate change is really complicated. Um, how do you break that down essentially in simple communications, where you don't lose interest essentially from across functions and employees?
So I do agree, Brian. It is a complex topic, and the nuances or the different variation that you can apply to this topic are very broad. Now, what has worked for us is linking it to the business, really bringing it back to either operationally or a day-to-day activity that people can relate to, that ultimately will have an impact on sustainability. So I'll give you an example. Water preservation. Even in our businesses. So as simple as we need to wash our trains, right? So how do we introduce some initiatives that say, based as part of our business, here are some of the initiatives that we are introducing to reduce our water consumption, which has a sustainability element, and that people can relate to, and they understand. It's a seemingly simple action that has implication, but people can actually relate to it. Similarly, in terms of how do we kind of manage our supply chain? So talking to procurement colleagues and saying, okay, we need to think about logistics. We need to think about how do we reduce the impact of logistics in our supply chain. This is something that they understand. Maybe they would have looked at it from a cost point of view, but then we say there is a sustainability angle as well. By localizing supply chain, not only are we, benefiting the business from quicker turnaround, lower cost, but also our footprint from transport all of a sudden is cut. So again, doing these changes, making sure that it's relevant to the audience that you're talking to, thinking about, understanding the business, understanding where can we create sustainability pockets. I think this creates more buy-in and takes a problem that is very complex and then structure it in small initiatives that actually make a difference and people can relate to.
Just want to take a step back and look at COP28. This year, of course, there's a big youth representation. There's a youth representative on the COP28 presidency. Of course, that youth representation will be releasing their global stock take before the end of COP, and we'll see that. We mentioned climate change is very complicated. Sometimes it can be very overwhelming. There's a lot of youth who want to participate and make impact, but sometimes it's very much, how do I start? Where do I start? Can I even do anything? Essentially, what would be your message to youth, for this COP28? Essentially, for those who want to make an impact and understand how they can really engage with the industry in order to do so.
So In terms of use, and I think this is a segment of the market that will make the biggest impact, in my opinion. So I'll bring it back to what Alstom can do and how we can engage with you. So we see that there is, in terms of trends and in terms of importance, obviously sustainability is top of mind for that demographic. Now we are in a space where we can offer sustainable solution for transport, and I'll take that narrow view to illustrate, and then we can expand a bit. By providing either urban mobility, so metros, trams, monorails, what have you, this is offering an alternative solution for someone that doesn't want to have an environmental footprint by having their own car, etc. So we have a mission to shift towards shared mobility. We work with our partners locally, whether this is Etihad Rail, RTA, or the main players there, to make sure that this access is available for everyone. And the more we provide access, the more this becomes seamless and easier, for lack of a better word. It removes the barrier for people to make different choices and decisions that will make their action more sustainable. And this is critical. I mean, ANCOP, we're hoping that a lot of the participants will use the Expo Link Metro to get to COP. With RTA, there's going to be deployment of e-buses. So the entire ecosystem is ready to make sure that people that want to have a lower footprint can have it. And this is our commitment as Alstom, to continue pushing these sustainable solutions, both from accessibility, but also from an energy efficiency point of view, so that we give the right access and tools for youth to be able to deliver on what is important for them.
It seems that 20 minutes goes by pretty fast, but I just wanted to wrap up with a final comment on the future of mobility, essentially. We see mega projects being announced across the region, across Europe, across Asia as well. How do you see the future of mobility? What are the current obstacles, but also the opportunities in terms of educating the public about it? For example, you mentioned all those opportunities, but of course, that all needs to come together in order to accelerate implementation of these solutions. How do you see the future of mobility in your perspective?
Look, we're very excited about the future of mobility. There's a lot of innovation that we see in this space, whether driven by our own solution or even by partners. So for me, the future of mobility will be around shared mobility, will be around using rail systems, whether urban or intra-city. Technology will play a big role in terms of removing some of the barriers in terms of accessibility, convenience, planning and what have you, so that people can benefit from different modes of transport in a seamless manner. So that's kind of one element where we see a lot of development. The other, I think, barrier is around, how do we unlock financing for sustainable mobility, right? So these are investment in urban rail project, in mainline rail project, specifically in not just the region and a broader global south, where there needs to be a lot of development. And I think a lot of progress is being made. There's more to be done. And at Alstom, we're proud to be part of, a lot of the development journey in African countries, and we'll continue to push that to make sure that we can deliver sustainable and accessible mobility solution to cities that need them the most.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, for your time. I imagine we could probably dive down a little bit deeper into each topic we discussed, but unfortunately we have to wrap up. But for all those listening and watching, please feel free to follow Paul on social media, and of course Alstom for the amazing insights and updates that they're doing across all their projects. And of course, follow Gulf Intelligence, where we'll be publishing this podcast and the content harvested from it. But thank you very much again for your time, Paul. We appreciate your intelligence that you shared, and we look forward to having you again on one of our future podcasts down the line.